Great segue to my next question, Coach. And that is, so say I got a rising freshman, I'm a parent. Just explain to me in your program, in your culture, what it looks like. What's that going to look like for an incoming freshman from day one in the weight room, which just happened, I think, 2 or 3 days ago, from that day all the way to National Letter of Intent signing day as a senior. Tell me what that's going to look like here at Franklin High School, Coach.
So the way I look at each kid is they're a program in themselves. So you sit down with the parents as they start going through the off season, but you sit down with the parents and you start having conversations about, okay, this is where we're at. Here's where we want to get to. Now we got to build a plan. His freshman year, what are we doing academically? What camps are you going to? How's your nutrition? If you have a private coach, is it the right private coach? Constant communication back and forth on what do you need to improve on? What are you doing good at? What does your weight room look like? And tracking all their progress. And so those are multiple meetings that have to happen throughout the year. It can't just be at the mandatory parent meeting and then right before spring ball. So there's a lot of time that you have to invest as a coach into that family, and then they've got to invest time as well. But it's constant communication, honest communication. I think the hardest thing for a lot of coaches is the transparency part.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so I think sitting down and just being honest with people, because we all have to understand, as a parent, your greatest asset is your child. And so, they're entrusting us with their kids and their future, and we've got to do right by those kids and do our due diligence. And it's a whole community effort. It's not just the coach. It's building relationships with the college coaches. It's, now you've got NIL. Certain programs aren't taking walk-ons anymore. There's the rule of 105 and how they're being allowed to fit their team. And so being outside of El Paso, I was, able to develop a lot of strong relationships with not just the coaches in the major Power 4 programs, but their support staff, and understanding the recruiting process and what that looks like. The academic piece, how our counselors here at Franklin have got to do their part. Teachers and administration, the importance of testing. And so it's really a whole widespread thing. It's not just, hey, you rush for 2,000 yards, you're going to get a look. And, I think when you're spending that amount of time and investing that amount of time, you truly are, as a program, then building people. Yeah. It takes a lot more than just your character meeting and the practices that you have. It's got to be a 365-day routine and process for these kids and their families, because parents work. They don't have time to research all that NCAA rules and regulations and what qualifies you, and how come you can get into Texas Tech but you can't get into Stanford? How come Baylor wants you but the Naval Academy won't take you? So all of those things, and understanding each program, each conference, what their requirements are by school, what those coaches are looking for when they come in. And then you have to have that relationship with those college coaches has got to be positive and transparent. We're here to sell our kids, but you burn one coach, it's going to follow.
It's not worth burning a relationship, to get a kid in there who's not exactly what you said he was.
Correct. So there's a lot into it. And I think the biggest thing that I could tell parents is your kids are going to be coached hard. They're going to be held accountable. But we're here to build relationships. I mean, they're going to leave football eventually.
Everyone does.
Everyone does. What are the relationships that we're building with those kids? And I think as a coach, that's the thing that I'm most proud of, is from the players I coached at Isleta to Marlin, Garland, and even players that I coached here at Franklin, I still have a great relationship and talk to those guys as they're starting their own families now. They're professionals. They're graduating college. Some of them have gotten into coaching. Relationships with their parents still to this day. I think at the end of it all, that's what it's about. And I think, when I hang up my whistle and I'm not coaching anymore, they'll forget about the wins, they'll forget about the trophies, but what type of relationships do we build with people is what's going to last with you forever.
Absolutely. I still talk to some of my high school coaches today.